What does it mean to live in a world where every single person you meet is carrying a wound that started before they were born? Not a wound they earned, not a wound they chose. A wound that was already in the room when they arrived, that shaped the room they grew up in, that taught them how to speak and what to fear and which doors not to open, and that they cannot point at because to them, it is just the texture of being alive. That is the question Adventure Time is asking, and it never asks it out loud. And once you notice the show is asking it, you cannot stop seeing it. The show is set roughly 1,000 years after a nuclear war that ended human civilization. It calls this war the Mushroom War. The land where the show takes place is called U, and U is what is left, which is to say U is a country built on top of a mass grave that everyone has agreed to call a forest. The characters who walk around in this country do not know they are walking on top of a grave, or they know but they do not say it, or they have forgotten how to say it. The candy people grew out of contamination. The vampires grew out of an apocalypse. The princesses are mutations. The wizards are survivors. And the heroes are children of people who never came home. None of it begins with the people on screen. All of it begins before them. Every story is somebody else's old wound, late, asking to be addressed. This is not a show about adventure. This is a show about inheritance. The thesis of this video, the thing that the next many hours are going to slowly demonstrate by walking through character after character, is that every person in U is the symptom of a wound that predates them, that the show is structured like a clinic rather than a fantasy, and that what Adventure Time calls adventure is what a clinic calls the waiting room. The fights, the dungeons, the kingdoms, the quests, all of it is what happens while the real injury sits in the next room and waits to be looked at. Sometimes the character walks into that next room. Sometimes the show closes the door, but the wound is always there. It is the architecture of U. Welcome to Tome. Get comfortable. This one goes deep. Let us get into it. Magic Man stands on the surface of Mars, and his wife is not there. The episode that gives us this image is called Sons of Mars. It is Season 4, Episode 15. It aired on July 23rd, 2012. And it is the first time the show formally tells you that one of its cruelest, most chaotic, most apparently random recurring characters is grieving. Not metaphorically. Literally. The cruelty is the grief. Before this episode, Magic Man is a punchline. He shows up. He turns Jake into a foot. He turns a citizen of Mars into a chair. He cackles. He vanishes. The show frames him the way it frames so many of its monsters in its first 3 seasons, which is to say, it lets him be funny because he is bewildering, and lets him be bewildering because he is funny, and trusts the audience to enjoy not understanding him. Then Season 4 starts unfolding the system that explains him, and the explanation is unbearable, and the show does not soften it. Here is what Sons of Mars shows you. Magic Man is from Mars. He was once a citizen there. He had a wife named Margles. She died. Her death broke something in him that Mars cannot fix, because Mars is a society of pacifists who run on collective sanity, and Magic Man cannot be sane anymore. The Martian authorities exiled him to Earth. On Earth, he became the chaotic agent of cruelty the show has been quietly cataloging for 30 episodes. The cruelty was not a personality. The cruelty was a body trying to live around the place where his wife used to be. Think about what that actually means. Every time Magic Man transformed a stranger into an object for no reason, every time he laughed at Jake's suffering, every time he wandered into a scene and broke it, the show was depicting the behavior of a man whose wife had died and whose civilization had thrown him out for failing to recover. The show let you laugh at him for 3 seasons before it told you what you had been laughing at. And here is the harder part. The show does not punish you for laughing. It just sets the truth down beside the comedy and lets the two sit together. The cruelty is real. The grief is real. The comedy was real. None of them cancel the others out. This is not a redemption arc. Sons of Mars is the opposite of a redemption arc. Magic Man does not become better in this episode. He does not learn. He does not heal. What the episode does instead is reframe him retroactively, so that every memory you have of his previous appearances now contains a piece of information you did not have at the time, which is that he was bereaved. The behavior does not change. The behavior is recontextualized. The villain becomes the symptom. This is the move. This is the central structural move of the entire show. Adventure Time will introduce a character as comedy or threat or background, let you live with that interpretation for as long as it takes for you to commit to it, and then walk into the room with a small, or so, devastating piece of context that turns the interpretation inside out. The character does not become more sympathetic exactly. The character becomes more accurate. You realize you have been watching the consequence of an event you were never shown. You have been watching the wound from the outside, calling it a personality. Glob and Gob and Grob and Grod, the divine collective who function as the moral authority of Mars in this episode, are not interested in healing Magic Man. They are interested in containment. Their judgment is that Magic Man is a danger, and that the only stable solution is exile. And the exile has lasted long enough by the time we meet him that exile has become his identity. He is not a man on Mars who has been temporarily removed. He is a man whose removal has become the room he lives in. The show does not editorialize about whether this was the correct decision. It just shows you the man who was made by it. Magic Man, in the structure of the show, is the prototype. He is the first character whose cruelty the show formally diagnoses as displaced grief. The first time you watch behavior get traced back to an event the character was not allowed to integrate. And once you have seen the show do this with Magic Man, you start watching for it everywhere. The watching is what the show wants. The watching is the show. There is a smaller detail in Sons of Mars that the show plants quietly and that pays off in later seasons. And it is worth pausing on it for a second, because it tells you how this show treats grief as a substance rather than as a feeling. When Magic Man is seen on Mars, before his banishment, the depiction the show gives of his old life is not extensive. The episode does not flash back to long scenes of him and Margles in domestic happiness. The show gives you only the shape of what was lost, not the content of it. You see a wife, you see a husband, you see that the wife is gone. The show treats his loss as something whose specific contents are not the audience's business, because the loss is private, and the privacy is part of what makes the loss real. What you see, instead of the lost life, is what the loss has built around him. The exile, the cruelty, the cackle that, once you know what it is, sounds different. This is the discipline of the show with grief. Adventure Time does not, as a rule, depict grief through extended flashback to the lost object. It depicts grief through the negative shape of the lost object in the present. You see what the person does instead. You see what the person can no longer say. You see what the person carries that does not fit the person they appear to be. Magic Man's cackle is, in this calculus, the grief sound. It is not a comedy sound. It is the sound a person makes when they have built a wall of behavior around something they cannot say. And here is the harder thing. The show, in later episodes, will give Magic Man moments of fragile, partial improvement, none of which constitute healing. He becomes, eventually, briefly, a kinder character. He retains his eccentricity. He retains the wound. The wound does not get smaller. The wound is just attended to by certain other characters, in small ways, at the edges. The show, in this character, is making one of its earliest and clearest cases, that healing, in any clean sense, is not what is on offer. What is on offer is the slow improvement that comes from being looked at by other people, with consistency, over long stretches of time. The improvement is real. It is not a cure. It is a different kind of life around the same wound. So that is one. That is the first wound this video is going to walk through, and the pattern it sets is the pattern that will keep returning. A character is presented. The character is incomprehensible or comic or scary or annoying. The show waits. Then the show shows you the wound. Then the show does not resolve it. The next wound is older than Magic Man's, and it has done more damage because it has had longer to do it, and because the man carrying it raised a child while he was carrying it, and the child is still walking around in ooh, and the man does not remember her. There is a moment in Season 4 where the Ice King knocks on Marceline's door with a notebook full of unfinished song lyrics and asks her, very politely, if she would consider helping him finish a song. He has no idea who she is. He thinks they are friends because he likes her. He does not know that he raised her after the end of the world. He does not know that she's over 1,000 years old. He does not know that the crown on his head, the same crown that gives him his ice magic and his bird companions and his princess obsession, is the reason he cannot remember her. He just thinks he has a song that is not done and that this nice vampire girl might be able to help. The episode is called I Remember You. It is Season 4, Episode 25. It aired on October 15th, 2012. And it is the moment the show stops being a fantasy adventure for children and admits, in plain terms, what it has been doing since Season 1. Here is the scene. The Ice King flies through Marceline's window. He has scribbled lyrics on torn paper. He sings them at her badly. The lyrics, when you actually listen to them, are not nonsense. They are an apology and a plea and a description of forgetting. They are the words of a person who knows, somewhere underneath the deterioration, that he is losing something he loves. And they are addressed to a person he no longer recognizes as the something he is losing. Marceline tries to walk him through what he is reading. She gets agitated. She gets cruel. She tells him to leave. And then she finds a box. The box has tapes in it. The tapes are of the Ice King, before he was the Ice King, when his name was Simon, talking to a small child he was protecting in the ruins of a destroyed world. The small child is Marceline. The man on the tapes is the man in her living room. The two facts are the same fact. The episode lets her, and lets you, sit with that for a long time. Now think about what this means about the previous 4 seasons. You have spent 4 seasons watching the Ice King abduct princesses, fight Finn and Jake, lose embarrassingly, be obsessed with marriage, fail to understand basic social cues, and serve as the show's most reliable source of comic relief. You have been laughing at him. The show wanted you to. The show was patient. The show waited until you were committed to your reading of him, and then the show showed you the tapes. The tapes are not a retcon. The tapes are not a sudden reveal. They are the confirmation of a structure the show has been building from underneath the entire time. The Ice King is a man who is being eaten by the object on his head, and the object on his head is the same object that gives him the powers that allow him to exist in this world at all. To take off the crown is to die. To wear the crown is to forget. There is no third option. The song he is trying to finish is called Remember You. The lyrics are not coherent. They are fragments. He keeps saying that this is all that he can do, that he is so sorry, that he will keep his promise even though he does not know what promise. Marceline finishes the song with him. She picks up where his memory gives out. She sings the parts he cannot reach. And the show, at the moment when the song lands, does not add swelling music. The show does not cut to a flashback. The show does not let the Ice King realize what is happening. He stays in his condition. He sings. He grins. He has no idea what just happened. He has no idea that he just had, with the daughter he raised, the closest thing to a conversation about his disappearance that he is ever capable of having. And then he leaves. And the episode ends. The show does not comment on this. It does not add music to tell you how to feel. It just lets the door close behind him. Sit with that for a second. The most emotionally devastating scene in any animated children's series of the 2010s. And the show stages it as an uncomfortable conversation between a grieving daughter and a confused old man, and then has the old man wander off humming, oblivious. The grief is on Marceline. The forgetting is on Simon. The two of them cannot meet in the middle because the middle no longer exists. The middle is what the crown ate. Then, the following season, the show goes back. Simon and Marcy is season 5, episode 14. It aired on March 25th, 2013. It is the episode Rebecca Sugar storyboarded immediately before leaving Adventure Time to develop Steven Universe. And it shows you the part you did not see in I Remember You. The part that happened 1,000 years ago. The part that explains why the tapes existed. The episode opens in the ruins of a city after the Mushroom War. A man and a small girl are walking through the rubble. He is gaunt. She is filthy and barefoot and clutching a stuffed toy. He is older. She is, at this point, maybe 7 years old. He is carrying her. He is feeding her. He is keeping her alive. He is also wearing the crown that, by the time we meet either of them in the present, will have destroyed every memory of this exact walk. The episode is the documentation of the relationship the crown will erase. They are looking for chicken soup. That is the literal plot. The little girl is sick and the man is trying to find her something warm to eat, and the world they are walking through is a smoking, lawless, monster-infested ruin in which chicken soup is functionally extinct. They find a broken grocery store. He scavenges. He is attacked. He uses the crown to defend her, and you watch his eyes go blue for a moment. You watch the magic come out of him, and you watch him come back to himself afterwards a little less than he was. The crown is feeding on him incrementally. Each use costs him a piece of himself. He knows it costs him a piece of himself. He uses it anyway, because the alternative is that the little girl dies. Then they get back to a sheltered place. He has found, somehow, a can of something edible. He gives it to her. She eats. He sits on a step in the dark and tries to sing her to sleep, and the song he sings is the theme song to the American sitcom Cheers. He does not know any lullabies. He knows pop songs. He knows the song that used to play on his television in his apartment before the world ended, before he found the crown, before he met this little girl, and he sings it to her in the ruined city because it is the closest thing he has to a piece of home. He cannot give her safety. He cannot give her food that will last. He cannot give her a future. He can give her this song. She falls asleep. He keeps watch. This needs to be stated plainly. A man whose mind is being eaten by a magical object is sitting on a stoop in a destroyed city, holding a small or orphaned child who is not his, singing the theme song of a beer commercial because it is the only soft thing he can remember, and the show is treating this scene with the gravity of a chapel. There is no joke. There is no irony. The Cheers theme is not played for laughs. It is the gentlest possible noise a man with no resources can produce for a child he is responsible for, and the show lets it land like a hymn. Now place this scene next to I Remember You. Place the singing of the Cheers theme next to the singing of Remember You, the unfinished song the Ice King brings to Marceline 1,000 years later. The same man, the same activity, two different songs. The first one is sung from a place of total presence in a moment of crisis by a man who knows exactly who he is protecting and why. The second one is sung from a place of total absence by a man who has lost the answer to both of those questions. The two scenes are the same scene with a millennium of crown decay in between them. The show stages them so that when you watch them in either order, The other one is sitting in the room with you. The crown is the eraser. The two scenes are the before and after. This is not the story of a sad old man. This is the story of a wound that lasts longer than the person who first sustained it. Simon Petrikov, the human archaeologist whose backstory the show reveals across Holly Jolly Secrets and I Remember You, does not have a life anymore. The Ice King has a life. The Ice King is the entity the crown left in Simon's body. And every kindness Simon ever showed, every promise he ever made to Marceline, has been preserved nowhere except inside her memory and on a stack of obsolete cassette tapes she keeps in a box she rarely opens. He cannot remember it. She cannot let go of it. The wound is older than every character around her. The wound is the room she has lived in for 10 centuries. And the wound is not something either of them inflicted on each other. They are both the carriers. Simon is the carrier of the crown, which is the carrier of the spell, which is the carrier of the mushroom war, which is the carrier of whatever older catastrophe the war was itself a consequence of. Each layer of harm has a layer of harm underneath it. By the time you get to the man and the girl sitting on a stoop in a ruined grocery store, you are looking at the third or fourth or fifth generation of damage, all of it expressing itself as one specific lullaby being sung in one specific night, in one specific apocalypse. The wound is the architecture. The lullaby is what the wound sounds like when somebody loves somebody despite it. There is one more detail in Simon and Marcy that needs to be sat with for a moment, because it is the moment the episode pivots from being a story about survival into being a story about disappearance. After Simon sings Marceline to sleep, the show stays with him. He is alone on the stoop. The crown is in his lap. He looks at it. He is not wearing it at that exact moment. He picks it up. He turns it over in his hands. The animation is patient with this. The show lets you see, in his eyes, the calculation a man makes when he is weighing a choice between two impossible options. If he wears the crown again, he will be able to keep her safe through whatever monster comes next, but he will lose a little more of his memory of her in the process. If he does not wear it, the monster will come, and he will not be able to fight it, and she will not survive. There is no third option. There is never a third option in this show. He puts it on. He has to. The episode does not stage this as a tragic choice. It stages it as a procedural one. The man does what the man has to do. The thing on his head gets a little stronger. The thing in his head gets a little quieter. And the small girl on the step beside him is still asleep. And the song he was singing has stopped. And the next time she wakes up, she will be a fraction of a centimeter further from being remembered. This is the structure the show has been building towards since the second season. The crown is not a curse. The crown is a contract. Every use is a payment. The payment is paid in pieces of Simon, and the pieces are paid out of his memory of the people who matter to him most. Marceline is the most expensive thing he is paying for, because she is the most expensive thing he has. If you watch the early Ice King episodes again, in the light of I Remember You, you start to notice the things the show was never highlighting, but was also never hiding. The Ice King's loneliness is the loudest joke of his early seasons. He wants a princess. He keeps trying to abduct one. The princesses keep refusing him. Finn and Jake keep beating him up. He keeps coming back. The repetition is the joke. But if you look at what the repetition is actually depicting, you see a man with no friends going, every week, to ask other people, in the only way he can think of, to be near him. The show stages this as comedy, because on the surface, it is comedy. The show also lets the comedy be a fact of his life. He genuinely has no one. The only people who come to his ice castle are the people he has, in his confused way, kidnapped. The only company he has consistently is a small group of penguins, the most prominent of whom is named Gunter. And Gunter, depending on the episode, is either a beloved pet, an irritation, or possibly a cosmic horror in disguise. The show keeps that ambiguity loose. What it does not keep ambiguous is that the Ice King's loneliness is structural. He cannot have friends because he cannot remember the people who have been kind to him long enough for them to become friends. The crown will not let him. Then there is the song again. Listen to the lyrics of the song Marceline finishes for him in I Remember You. He keeps singing about how he is so sorry and how he hopes someone will forgive him and how this is all that he can do. He does not know who he is apologizing to. He thinks he is writing a song about a generic friendship he half remembers. He is, in fact, writing the apology he never got the chance to deliver to the daughter he raised. The crown has reduced his apology to a feeling he cannot attach to a name. The feeling is still in him. The name has been eaten. He sings the feeling. Marceline supplies the name. The song completes itself across the two of them. The completion does not heal him. He leaves humming. The show, by staging this completion, is doing one of its most quietly devastating things. It is showing you that even in conditions of total memory failure, the affect of love can persist. The Ice King does not know who Marceline is. He still, in some pre-verbal part of himself, knows that he owes her an apology. The owing has outlasted the knowledge. The owing is what the crown could not eat. The show is suggesting, very gently, that there is a kind of relational debt that runs underneath cognition, and that the wound of forgetting is not the same as the wound of having never been in relation. The relation is, even now, doing something inside him. The doing is what produces the song. The song is what arrives at her door. And in Simon and Marcy, the show pairs this with a scene at the beginning of the episode in which young Marceline finds a doll. The doll is a small, beat-up toy with a button eye. Simon, when he sees her holding it, makes a small joke. The doll's name, in the show's lore, is Hambo. Hambo will, in much later episodes, become one of the show's most important emotional artifacts. He is the doll Marceline carries through her childhood. He is the doll she keeps into her adulthood. He is the doll Ash, her ex-boyfriend, will, in a different episode, sell to a witch in season 3. He is the doll Marceline will spend an entire episode trying to recover, because to lose Hambo is to lose one of the last physical objects connecting her present to the person Simon was when he gave him to her. The show does not need to underline this connection at the point Hambo first appears. The show just lets the doll sit in young Marceline's lap, in the dark of the ruined city, while the man who gave him to her sings a beer commercial to keep her asleep. The doll is the proof. The doll outlasts the man. The doll, eventually, almost outlasts the doll itself. That too is the wound. That is the wound being addressed in the form of an inanimate object that is, in this episode, sleeping in a child's arms. The show does not tell you this. The show shows you a man singing the Cheers theme to a vampire child in the ruins of the world. It trusts you to do the math. And once you have done the math, you cannot watch any other Ice King scene the same way again. The crown is not a comedic prop. The crown is the slow-motion murder of a kind man. The kingdom of the Ice King is the building that murder constructed around itself. Marceline is the only person on Earth who remembers the murder is happening. And Marceline is, herself, the next wound this video is going to look at, because Marceline is also the carrier of something older than the man who raised her. But before her, there is a different father and a different son, and a different version of the same shape. And that one belongs to Finn. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Finn the human spends most of the show looking for his father. He does not know this for the first 3 seasons. He thinks he is an orphan. He thinks he is the last human. He has been told both of these things and he has accepted them. Then, in season 5, in an episode called Billy's Bucket List, he watches a recording of his deceased mentor that mentions his father might still be alive, and the shape of his life starts bending toward a destination he had not previously known existed. The destination is a multiversal prison called the Citadel. The episode in which he arrives there is called Wake Up. It is the first episode of season 6. It aired on April 21st, 2014. It is paired with the episode that immediately follows it, Escape from the Citadel, which aired the same night, and together, those 2 episodes constitute the central trauma of the back half of the show. The story is this. Finn and Jake go to find Finn's father. They need Prismo, the wish-granting being from the time room, to help them. The journey takes them across realities and into the Citadel itself, a prison for cosmic criminals. Finn's father, a man named Martin Mertens, is one of the inmates. The trip is presented in the structure of a quest. Finn has spent his whole life wanting this. He is, on the way there, the happiest you have seen him in 2 seasons. He is hopeful. He keeps asking Jake what he should say. He keeps imagining what his father will be like. The show, during the journey, gives him exactly the affect of a teenager about to meet a parent for the first time, which is to say, a mixture of nervousness and rehearsal and unprotected hope. The narration does not need to underline any of this. Jeremy Shada, who voices Finn, plays the entire trip on the front of his throat with the rasping eagerness of a kid trying not to be too eager. The show lets you watch him want this, and then they get there, and then the doors open. Escape from the Citadel is the second half of the diptych. It is season 6, episode 2. Same air date, April 21st, 2014. The Citadel opens. The criminals are in tubes. Finn finds the tube with his father in it. Martin Mertens is awake. Martin Mertens looks at his son, and Martin Mertens does not recognize him. He thinks Finn is one of the wardens. He is dismissive. He is performing for Finn the way a con man performs for a parole officer. He wants out. He is using whoever is in front of him to get out. The reunion Finn has been imagining for half a season is not happening because the man on the other side of the glass is not interested in having it. Finn tries to tell him who he is. Martin barely engages. He keeps angling for the opening of the cell. The Citadel begins to break because the cosmic prison is also a body, and the body is failing. Citadel guardians are dying. Citadel criminals are escaping. In the chaos, a fluid called the Citadel Guardian's blood, which is something like a universal solvent for cosmic structure, sprays out. Finn lifts his arm to protect himself. The blood lands on him. The blood begins to dissolve him. Specifically, it begins to dissolve his right arm. Finn looks at his own arm dissolving, and the look on his face is not pain. It is shock. The body cannot believe what is happening to it. The body is still trying to process that the man in the tube did not recognize it. And now the body is being unmade, and the two events are happening in the same minute, and the show is not slowing down to mark the difference between them. Then his father climbs out of the tube. He gets out. He floats up into space because he has the gear and the situational knowledge to do it. Finn, on the falling Citadel floor with his arm gone, calls after him. Martin does not stop. He does not turn around. He floats up and away and is gone, and the show holds on Finn's face, in close-up, as the realization arrives. There is no swell of music. There is no monologue. There is no rage. There is no scream. The show strips the soundtrack down to almost nothing, and what fills the space is the quiet of a teenager understanding, in real time, that the version of his father he had built in his head is not going to exist for him. Finn falls. Jake catches him. They land in the water. Finn is floating on his back. His right arm is a stump. The shoulder is wet. The blood has stopped flowing because the blood has already done what it was going to do, and a small green sprout begins to grow out of the stump. The episode ends on this image. There is no music. The show strips it out completely. Jake is asking him if he is okay. Finn does not answer. He looks at the place where his arm used to be. The show does not tell you how to feel about that. The show just gives you the image and the silence and the absence of his father, and it lets the episode end. This is the second wound. This is the inheritance the show has been pointing at since the day Finn was introduced as a found orphan in the tree fort. He was found because he had been left. He had been left because his father had a history of leaving. His father did not recognize him because his father had never bothered, in 18 years of incarceration, to think about him. Finn was looking for the man who, in the man's own internal accounting, did not exist. The trip to the Citadel was a child trying to be seen by a person who had never been the kind of person who could see him. The trip cost him his arm. The trip did not cost him the meeting, because the meeting was never going to happen. The trip cost him the version of his father he had been carrying inside himself. The arm was the price of the carrying. Now think about what the show does next. It does not give Finn a healing arc. It does not have him sit down and process his abandonment. It puts him back into the world with a stump where his arm used to be and lets him keep adventuring. He goes to school, he fights bad guys, he hangs out with Jake, he sometimes thinks about his father, sometimes he does not. The show lets the wound be a fact, not a plot point. The arm grows back, eventually, after a long sequence involving a flower and a grass demon and an alternate self, and the way it grows back is itself a story. But for a long stretch of the show, Finn just has one arm. He does not talk about it much. He learns to fight with the stump. He puts a sock over it sometimes. He grows a flower out of it. He treats it as a thing that happened. The show treats it as a thing that happened. The show treats most things this way, which is part of why the wounds in this show feel real. The show does not give them special weight. The show lets them weigh what they weigh. The thing the show does instead, the harder thing, is let Martin keep existing. Martin does not die at the Citadel. Martin survives. Martin appears in later episodes. He continues to be exactly the man he was in the tube. He is a con man, he is a flake, he is charming and unreliable and not interested in being anyone's father. The show gives Finn multiple chances to confront him, multiple opportunities to extract the recognition his teenage self was looking for, and the show, every single time, makes sure that recognition does not arrive. Martin does not become a good father. Martin does not even become an interesting father. Martin remains, in his behavior, the man whose absence shaped Finn from the beginning. The wound is not closed by his presence. The wound is, if anything, confirmed by his presence. Finn understands, by the time the show has him understand it, that the father he was looking for did not exist before he was looking and does not exist now. The father is a position no one is filling. The position is the wound. And the arm. The arm matters because the arm is the show's way of giving you a visible measurement of an invisible cost. You cannot show, in a scene, how much a teenager has been damaged by parental abandonment. You can show, in a scene, the arm that grew the flower that became the doorway to the inheritance the kid did not know he had. The show is not being subtle about what it is doing here. It is using the physical mutilation to ground a psychological event the show would otherwise have no economical way to depict. The arm is not a metaphor. The arm is a metaphor and a fact at the same time. It is both things. The show keeps doing this. The show keeps refusing to let the wound be either a metaphor or a fact. It insists, in scene after scene, that the wound is both. One of the most precise things about the way Escape from the Citadel handles its trauma is that it gives Finn no language for what just happened to him. He does not, in the episode, articulate that his father did not recognize him. He does not, in the episode, articulate that he just lost an arm. He does not, in the episode, articulate anything. Jake asks him if he is okay, and he does not answer. The episode ends with him in the water, with a sprout coming out of his shoulder, and a silence that the show refuses to fill. In subsequent episodes, Finn slowly, gradually, in small fragments, begins to find the language. He begins to talk about it with Jake. He begins to dream about it. He has an entire arc across season 6, in which the dream itself becomes a recurring narrative device, and the dream is always, in some form, a return to the moment in the tube. The body remembers what the mouth cannot say. The dream returns. The arm grows back slowly. The wound, in this case, becomes the architecture of his entire interior life for the rest of his adolescence. There is also a detail about Martin that the show waits a long time to deliver. In an episode much later in the run, an episode called The Visitor, which is the 8th episode of season 7 and aired on November 23rd, 2015, Martin returns. He arrives in U. He claims to be looking for Finn. He is, briefly, around. The episode gives Finn one more chance at the conversation he never got at the Citadel. Martin, in this episode, is friendlier than he was in the tube. He is performative. He is presenting himself as a reformed parent. He tells Finn warm things. He plays at being a father for the duration of an evening. And then, by the end of the episode, the show, in its careful, slow way, makes it clear that Martin is, in fact, exactly the same man as before, and that the warmth is a tactic, and that there is, behind the warmth, the same vacancy that was in the tube. Finn, in this episode, gets enough of his father to confirm what the Citadel had already shown him, which is that the father he had been imagining for half a lifetime is not a person who exists. The episode does not stage the confirmation as a crisis. The episode stages it as a quiet, accepted disappointment. Finn lets him go. He does not chase him. He does not beg. He has, by this point, processed enough of what happened at the Citadel to recognize that wanting the man to be a father will not make the man a father. The show does not reward Finn with a healing scene. The show rewards him with the slightly grim wisdom of having seen the same wound twice and being able to recognize it the second time. This is, in the show's logic, also a kind of attendance. Finn, in season 7, by being able to look at his father clearly without expecting him to be different, is performing on himself the kindness that no other person was able to perform on him in time. He is, in a small way, mothering himself. He is being to himself the witness his actual father refused to be. The show does not make a speech about this. The show simply lets him handle the second encounter with the maturity he could not have had at the first one, and lets the difference between the two encounters be the visible measure of how much the wound at the Citadel has, over 2 seasons, become a kind of literacy. The wound does not heal. The wound becomes the lens through which the person who carries it can recognize the same wound, faster, the next time it shows up. That is the only redemption arc the show is willing to offer. It is the redemption arc of the carrier, not the wound. The wound is still the wound. The carrier, with time and friends, can sometimes get better at carrying. The other thing that needs to be said about Wake Up and Escape from the Citadel is that they are the first episodes in which the show formally introduces the Lich as an existential rather than personal antagonist. The Lich, voiced by Ron Perlman, has been around since season 1. He has been the show's main villain. He has been defeated and redefeated. But in Wake Up, the Lich is no longer a villain Finn can fight. The Lich is the thing the Citadel is built to contain. The Lich is the thing whose escape the universe itself is structured around preventing. And in the conversation Finn briefly has with the Lich in this episode, the Lich does not threaten. The Lich just speaks. The Lich tells Finn, in the calmest possible voice, what it is. The Lich is the certainty that all things end. The Lich is the eventual nothing at the bottom of everything. The Lich is the wound the universe carries about itself. And Finn, on the trip to find his father, walks past it without flinching. He walks past the wound of the universe because he is trying to address the wound of his life. The two wounds are scaled differently. The two wounds are the same shape. The Citadel does not survive the visit. Neither, in some functional sense, does Finn. Both end the episode broken. Both keep walking around afterwards, because that is what wounded structures do in this show. They keep walking around. So that is 2. Magic Man's wife, Simon's crown, Finn's father, 3 wounds, 3 displacements. 3 characters whose entire visible behavior the show eventually traces back to an event the character was not allowed to integrate. And then, having established the pattern, the show does the most unsettling thing it has done up to this point in its run. It produces a 4th character whose entire existence is a wound, who was generated from a wound, whose body is the wound. His name is Fern, and he is, in the most literal possible way, the inheritance Finn could not avoid. There is a scene in 3 Buckets that most people remember as the moment Fern dies, and then they move past it. 3 Buckets is season 9, episode 14. It aired in 2018. It is one of the final episodes before the finale arc begins. And the moment in it that everyone remembers is a fight between Finn and Fern, in which Finn's prosthetic grass sword arm which has its own consciousness, hears Finn give an order and executes it in the worst possible way. The order was meant to be a manifestation of finality. The arm hears fatality. The arm performs fatality. Fern dies. To understand what is happening here, you have to back up. Fern is what is called a grass Finn. He was created by a sentient grass demon that, several seasons earlier, was bound into the magical sword Finn carried for most of the early show. The grass demon got loose, took shape, latched onto Finn, and produced eventually a duplicate of Finn made entirely of grass. The duplicate has Finn's memories. The duplicate has Finn's appearance. The duplicate has Finn's voice. The duplicate, because he has Finn's memories without the body or the life that made those memories survivable, becomes, over time, a separate consciousness that resents the original. Fern was generated to be Finn. Fern cannot ever be Finn because Finn exists. The longer Fern lives, the more obvious this becomes to Fern. By the time we get to 3 buckets, Fern has had several seasons to understand what he is, which is a copy of a person walking around in a world that does not need him. The fight in 3 buckets is not really a fight. It is a confession in motion. Fern is attacking Finn because Finn is the source of Fern's despair. Finn is defending himself because he does not know what else to do. The two of them are using each other's bodies as the surfaces on which to argue about whether either of them has the right to exist. Finn does not want to kill Fern. Finn has, by this point, accepted Fern as something like a brother. The duplication is a fact Finn has learned to live with. Fern has not learned to live with it. Fern cannot live with it. The grass demon under Fern's surface is also pushing him toward the conclusion that one of them has to end. Finn gives the prosthetic an order. The order is meant to be defensive. The prosthetic, which is a magical artifact that grew from a flower that grew from the stump in Escape from the Citadel, and is therefore directly descended from the wound Finn took at the Citadel, mishears the order. It mishears finality as fatality. Finn's arm, in other words, kills Fern. Finn does not. The arm does. The arm Finn lost at the Citadel was replaced by a grass arm. The grass arm came from the same lineage of contamination that produced Fern. The arm and Fern are, in a sense, siblings. The arm kills Fern. The wound kills the wound. The inheritance kills the inheritance. This needs to be stated plainly. Finn's father abandoned him, which led to his arm being dissolved at the Citadel, which led to a flower growing out of the stump, which led to a magical replacement arm grown from the same demonic substrate that also generated his evil duplicate, who, in the climactic moment, is killed by the replacement arm because the arm misinterprets a word from the original Finn. Every step in that chain is a wound producing the next wound. There is no point in the chain at which a character makes a clean, healing choice. Every choice is the choice of a person trying to survive the previous wound by acting from inside it. Fern dies because the wound is doing what wounds do, which is to spread. The show does not let you off here. The show does not let the death be clean. After the arm strikes, Fern begins to dissolve. He is dying in front of Finn. Finn, who did not mean for this to happen, holds him. They have a conversation. Fern is, in his last minutes, sad. Not angry, not vengeful. Sad. He is sad about who he was. Sad about the original conditions of his creation. Sad that he never got to be a real person. Sad that his only available exit is dying in the arms of the original, whose presence kept proving he was not. The conversation is short. The show does not score it heavily. The show lets you sit with the death of a character who was, by any measure, also a victim of an inherited wound he did not author and could not escape. Finn buries what is left of Fern in a flower pot. The flower pot becomes a tree. The tree, later, becomes a small piece of the world that Finn returns to and tends. This is the show's habit. It does not let pain go unmarked. It also does not let pain end. The tree is still standing in the finale. The death of Fern is folded into the landscape of Ooh and continues, in altered form, to exist. The wound becomes a tree. The tree is still part of the wound. The wound is now also a place a person can sit and remember. So now we have 4: Magic Man's wife, Simon's crown, Finn's father, Fern's creation. The pattern is no longer a pattern. The pattern is the show. Adventure Time is, by the time we are several seasons in, primarily a show about characters whose entire existence is a response to a wound they did not choose. And the show is interested, not in fixing the wounds, but in showing you what the wounds look like once they have been carried for long enough to become the carrier. The next character we are going to look at carries a wound of an entirely different shape, because she is, in the strictest sense, made out of someone else's intention. She does not have parents in the conventional sense. She has a creator. The creator is herself. The creature is also herself. She is both halves of her own wound at once. Her name is Princess Bubblegum, and the wound she carries is the wound of being the substrate from which her entire civilization is grown. Princess Bubblegum is the ruler of the Candy Kingdom. The Candy Kingdom is a society of sentient candy beings who eat, work, vote, fall in love, fall ill, get murdered, and die. They are not metaphors. They are people. They have inner lives. They are also, in the show's literal lore, made of the same substance as the princess who rules them. They were grown, deliberately, by her, from material her body produces. She is the queen and the soil at the same time. Goliad is Season 4, Episode 10. It aired on June 18th, 2012. And Goliad is the episode in which the show first makes you understand, in plain terms, what it means to have a sovereign who is also the biological source of the people she rules. The plot of Goliad is that Princess Bubblegum, anticipating her eventual death, decides to grow a successor. She uses a strand of her own hair and a strand of hair from a deceased calf to create a hybrid creature called Goliad, who is meant to be the next ruler of the Candy Kingdom. Goliad is a child. Goliad is also a sphinx-like creature with overwhelming psychic power. Princess Bubblegum tries to teach Goliad the principles of good governance. She tries to teach Goliad to lead with patience and care. And Goliad, over the course of a single afternoon, learns instead that the only sustainable governing principle is total psychic dominance. By the end of the episode, Goliad has to be contained inside a psychic standoff with Stormo, a second hybrid Princess Bubblegum and Finn create from a strand of Finn's hair, who is meant to balance Goliad's authoritarianism with empathy. The two are locked, at the close of the episode, in a frozen psychic battle that, the show implies, may last forever. On the surface, this is a cautionary tale about cloning and power. Underneath, it is something more specific. It is the show showing you, in a single hour, how Princess Bubblegum thinks about succession. She thinks about it as a biological problem. She thinks about it as a substrate problem. She does not consider, in any of the episode's discussion of who should rule the Candy Kingdom after her, the possibility of letting a non-Bubblegum being lead. She does not consider election. She does not consider abdication. She considers cultivation, because to her, ruling is something an organism does. The organism, if it is going to be the right kind of organism, has to be grown from the right kind of material. The material is her. There is a parallel detail in Holly Jolly Secrets, which is Season 3, Episode 19 and 20, a two-parter that aired on December 5th, 2011. In this episode, Finn and Jake discover a collection of secret video diaries the Ice King has been recording. The diaries are, on the surface, the source of the episode's plot. They are also one of the show's earliest formal admissions that the Ice King is Simon Petrikov, the human archaeologist who put on the crown and lost himself. And they include, almost as a throwaway detail, a moment in which Simon is talking about the kinds of creatures he has seen in his wanderings around the ruined world. He mentions in passing that Princess Bubblegum's gum people grow on a particular tree, and that he has seen them growing. The episode does not dwell on this. It is sitting in the diaries among dozens of other observations. But what it tells you is that the candy people are, in the lore of the show, literally a plant. They are grown, they sprout, they are harvested, they are then organized into a society. Now put those two facts next to each other. Princess Bubblegum's candy. People are biologically grown, and Princess Bubblegum considers governance to be a problem of growing the correct successor. Her entire ethic of leadership, from this angle, is botanical. She is a gardener. The kingdom is a garden. The garden is alive. The plants in the garden can think. They can suffer. They can love each other and lose each other and grieve. And the gardener is also the seed. This is, by itself, an unusual setup for a children's show, and the show does not simplify it. Princess Bubblegum is not a villain. She loves the candy people. She is, by most measures, a competent and benevolent ruler. She is also, by other measures, the kind of leader who has, in past episodes, surveilled her own citizens, replaced their bodies in the night to extract information, manipulated their elections, and instituted secret police. She does all of this from inside the conviction that she knows what is best for them, and she knows what is best for them because she made them. And what she made them for is to be a society that survives. The survival, in her calculus, is more important than any single individual within it. She is willing to do small unkindnesses to protect the larger health of the population. She is a gardener pruning the garden. And here is the wound. Princess Bubblegum is not free either. She did not choose to be the substrate of a civilization. She inherited that role from the conditions of her own creation, which are, themselves, never fully explained, but which the show consistently implies were not chosen by her. Her body is the body that the candy people are made of. Her decisions are constrained by the fact that her decisions are also gardening decisions. She cannot abdicate, because abdication does not solve the problem that she is, in addition to being a queen, the soil. Even if she left the throne, the kingdom would still be made of her. The kingdom would still need a gardener. The kingdom would still be grown from someone, and the someone, currently, is her. There is no exit from this position. It is not a job. It is what she is. And once you see this, you cannot unsee how the show writes her. Every authoritarian move she makes, every cold political calculation, every act of surveillance, is the behavior of a person whose body and whose civilization are not separable. The wound is the entanglement. She does not get to be only one person. She is a person and an ecosystem and a constitution at the same time. The candy people know none of this. They live their lives. They have weddings and funerals and arguments over breakfast. And the substrate of their entire existence is sitting in a tower above them, alone, doing math about how much of their lives she can engineer without breaking the metaphor that they are independent beings. The show does not editorialize about whether this is good or bad. The show just shows you, over many seasons, the cost of being the substance your subjects are made of. The cost is loneliness. The cost is moral compromise. The cost is the impossibility of ever, for 1 full hour, being only one person. Princess Bubblegum, by the end of the series, has accumulated centuries of this cost. Her hair is graying. Her body is tired. The show, in late episodes, gives her quiet scenes in which she sits in her lab and looks out the window, and you can see, on her face, the weight of a long sovereignty no one elected her to perform. She just keeps performing it because the alternative is the death of the people whose existence she is the soil of. There is a particular sequence the show returns to, across multiple episodes, in which Princess Bubblegum is shown working alone in her laboratory at night. The visual grammar of these scenes is consistent. The lab is mostly dark. There is one source of warm light, usually a desk lamp. She is bent over something. She is not speaking. She is not being observed. The show, in showing you these scenes, is telling you something about what her sovereignty actually looks like behind closed doors. It does not look like a court. It does not look like a council. It looks like a single person, working at a bench, late, on a problem she has not been able to delegate. The candy people, while she works, are sleeping. The kingdom, while she works, is being held together by her individual cognition. Every night she works is another night the kingdom did not collapse. The work is not glamorous. The work is the maintenance of an organism that is also, in some sense, her body. She is every night both the patient and the doctor. She is every night both the gardener and the garden. The show, by showing you these scenes without dramatizing them, is making the same point it makes about Magic Man's cackle and Simon's lullaby. The sovereignty is the wound made visible. The maintenance is the attendance. The maintenance is what keeps the wound from becoming the end of the world. And there is a second detail about Princess Bubblegum that is structurally important and that the show is careful with. She does not, in any episode, complain. She does not, in any episode, ask anyone to help her with the political weight she is carrying. The closest she gets is in her relationship with Marceline, which the show has been quietly developing since the first season, and which the show, by the finale, will let her name in public. Marceline is the only person in who is, in the relevant sense, on her timeline. Marceline is the only person who has been around long enough to see what Princess Bubblegum has been doing for centuries. Marceline is the only person who can witness her sovereignty without being a subject of it. That is, in this show's terms, why the two of them found each other. Not because they were predestined, because they were the only two beings in their world who could be present to each other on the scale on which their lives were actually happening. The attendance, in their case, is mutual. The wound, in their case, is the same wound from opposite ends. Princess Bubblegum carries the wound of being the substrate. Marceline carries the wound of being the witness. Each of them, in the other, finds a person whose wound is shaped like a key for theirs. That is the wound. That is the inheritance. That is the inherited fact she did not choose and cannot escape. And the show, with the same patience it gives every other inheritance in Ooh, lets her carry it for as long as it takes for you to see what carrying it has done to her face. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is a moment in Season 7 where Marceline asks Princess Bubblegum to cure her vampirism, and she says it the way a person asks for a small favor. The favor is to remove her immortality. The favor is to remove the thing that has kept her alive for over 1,000 years. The favor is to remove the condition under which she met and loved and lost every human and non-human person she has ever known. She wants it gone. She wants to be mortal. She is asking the only scientist alive who might be able to do it. And the scientist, who has known her for centuries, is willing to try. The episode is the first part of Stakes. Stakes is the 8-episode miniseries that ran in November 2015. It is the most concentrated piece of single-character writing the show ever produced, and it is, structurally, the documentation of a character asking to set down a wound that has gotten heavier than she can hold. To understand what is happening, you have to know Marceline. You have to know that she is over 1,000 years old. You have to know that her mother was human, and her father is a demon named Hunson Abadir, who rules the Nightosphere, and that the combination of those two parentages produced a child who was never going to fit cleanly into any one species. You have to know that her mother died during the Mushroom War, when Marceline was very young, and that the man who raised her after that was Simon Petrikov, who had not yet become the Ice King, who could still remember who he was, who carried her through the ruins and sang her the Cheers theme, and kept her alive until he had to leave because the crown was eating him. You have to know that. Since then, she has watched everyone she has ever loved either die or change into someone unrecognizable, and that she has lived through the entire collapse of human civilization, and the rise of post-human and the slow growth of every kingdom that currently exists, and that she has done all of this in a body that does not age and does not stop and does not allow her, ever, to be on the same timeline as anyone she cares about. That is the condition. That is the wound. Marceline's wound is duration. Marceline is a survivor of every loss the show has depicted, and many it has not. And she has been the survivor for so long that survival has become its own kind of mourning. The mourning has no end because the mourning has no closure, because she cannot die. And the people who could close it for her by being witnessed in turn cannot, because they are not there anymore. The first episode of Stakes opens on her trying to set this down. She wakes Princess Bubblegum up in the middle of the night. She is wearing her usual clothes. She is hovering, the way she always hovers. She tells Bonnie, in a casual voice that is not casual, that she wants to be a regular person. She wants to feel the sun. She wants to grow old. She wants to die, eventually, the way people are supposed to die. Princess Bubblegum listens. Princess Bubblegum does not argue. Princess Bubblegum says she will help. The two of them go to a lab. The procedure begins. The procedure works. The vampirism is removed from her body, and, immediately, the vampirism, which had been contained inside her, has to go somewhere else. It cannot just disappear. It is matter. It is a thing. It is removed from her and stored in a containment unit. And the containment unit fails, because the show is the show. And the original vampires, whom Marceline killed 1,000 years ago, which is how she became the vampire queen in the first place, are released back into the world. The premise of the rest of the miniseries is that Marceline now has to hunt down and re-defeat the original vampire court of the same vampires whose powers she absorbed when she killed them centuries earlier, while no longer having any of those powers herself. She is, for the first time in 1,000 years, mortal. She is also, for the first time in 1,000 years, being asked to handle an existential threat to the world without the tools she had built up to handle it. The miniseries becomes the story of a woman trying to be a person, while finishing the unfinished business of having been a monster. The two things are not compatible. The miniseries knows they are not. The miniseries is about her trying anyway. Along the way, in episodes like Vamps About, which is the third part of the miniseries and aired in mid-November 2015, the show takes you back, in flashback, to Marceline as a small adolescent in the ruined world, walking through the rubble alone after Simon has left her, and beginning to organize the surviving humans she finds into a kind of community. The show takes its time with these flashbacks. It does not rush them. It shows you Marceline as a young person trying to build something. It shows you the vampires interrupting that effort, one by one, picking off the humans she was trying to protect. It shows you her decision to fight the vampires by becoming what she had to become to fight them. It shows you her absorbing their powers as she kills them. And it shows you, at the end of that arc, a young Marceline standing alone in a field, having defeated the vampire court, having saved no one she had been trying to save, having become, by necessity, the thing she had been trying to defeat. That is the origin. That is the wound. Her vampirism is not a curse she was born with. It is a coping mechanism she chose, in adolescence, to survive a catastrophe that was already happening to her, and she has been carrying that coping mechanism for 1,000 years afterwards, because she could not figure out, in that long span of time, how to put it down. Stakes is the story of her trying to put it down. Stakes is also the story of the show telling you that, even when you try to put down a wound, the wound has consequences that have to be addressed before you are allowed to set it down. The vampires Marceline killed to become the vampire queen are released back into when she gives up the vampirism. They were stored inside her. Her body had been their prison. The body had been doing labor she did not consciously know it was doing. Trying to set down the labor caused the labor to come out. She has to handle them, one by one, while no longer being able to use the strength she had previously used. In The Empress Eyes, which is the fourth part of the miniseries, Marceline encounters the Empress, one of the original vampires, in a graveyard. The Empress is, in the iconography of the show, a slim, regal, terrifying figure who moves with a kind of weightlessness that the animation gives almost as an aesthetic choice, the way you might give a character a particular color. Marceline confronts her. Marceline, who no longer has her powers, is, in the fight, almost killed. The episode shows you the fight in extended, slow detail. The Empress is, for almost the entire fight, simply faster, simply stronger, simply more practiced. Marceline survives by improvisation and by the help of a particular ghost, but she does not win the fight on any of the terms she would have won it as the vampire queen. She wins it on the terms of a mortal woman who is making it up as she goes. And here is the analytical point. The show is staging, across these 8 episodes, The difference between a wound you have integrated into your power and a wound you are simply still carrying. Marceline, as the vampire queen, had integrated the loss into a capacity. The loss had become the source of her ability to protect what was left. When she removes the vampirism, she removes the integration. The loss is back to being just loss. The capacity is gone. The wound, in its original unchanneled form, is what she has to walk around with. And the miniseries asks, repeatedly, whether that is actually a better life than the one she had as the vampire queen, and the answer the show eventually gives is complicated. It is not yes, it is not no. It is closer to, this is the life she wants, and the cost of having the life she wants is having to do the work that her powers have been doing for her, by hand, with whoever will help her. The final episode of the miniseries is The Dark Cloud, the 8th part. It is the climactic confrontation. The Dark Cloud is the original formless vampire whose corruption Marceline had absorbed when she killed the vampire court the first time. It returns. It threatens to consume Ooh, and Marceline, in the climactic moment, agrees to take its corruption back into herself, becoming the vampire queen again, in order to save the world. The choice is not framed as a triumph. The choice is framed as a return. She had wanted to set down the wound. She is told, by the structure of the world she lives in, that the wound is not hers to set down alone. The wound is doing work. The work has to be done by somebody. She agrees, again, to be the somebody. The episode ends with her, in the morning, looking at the sunrise she will no longer be able to feel. Think about that ending. She started the miniseries asking to be a normal person. She ends the miniseries having voluntarily taken her abnormality back. In between, she has done the moral accounting that allowed her to make that decision with her eyes open. She is not the vampire queen because she was cursed. She is the vampire queen because, given the actual conditions of the world, becoming the vampire queen is the most useful thing she can do with her ability to survive. The wound has a shape that fits a job. The job has to be done. She fits the wound. She picks it up again. There is a small detail in the construction of the final episode that deserves its own pause. When Marceline takes the corruption back, she does not do it alone in a chamber. And she does not do it from a position of resignation. She is surrounded by the people who came with her on the miniseries. Princess Bubblegum is there, Finn is there, Jake is there. Bonnie, who started the miniseries by removing the vampirism from Marceline's body in the first place, is now there to support the decision to put it back. The same scientist who, 8 episodes earlier, had been the agent of the wound being lifted, is now standing beside the patient who is choosing, with her eyes open, to pick the wound back up. The show, in this staging, is making one of its most precise claims about the relationship between attendance and decision. The decision Marceline makes is not a decision she could have made alone. The decision requires the witnesses. The witnesses do not, in any literal sense, change the decision. The witnesses make the decision survivable. The wound is the same wound. The relationship to the wound is now mediated by people who have stayed. And the song that runs through the miniseries, the song the show keeps returning to, is Everything Stays. It is the lullaby Marceline's mother sang to her, before the war, before the loss of her mother, before all of it. The lyrics are about how things change, but how, in changing, they also persist. The song is sad, in the way that lullabies are sad to the adult listening for the child. The show uses it, throughout stakes, as a kind of theme music for Marceline's entire condition. The point of the song is that nothing in Marceline's life has actually gone away. Her mother is gone, but the lullaby is still inside her. Simon is gone in the sense that he no longer remembers her, but he is still in the same world. The vampires are gone in the sense that she killed them, but they are stored in her body, and they get released, and they come back. Everything stays. Everything she has ever loved or lost or had to become is still in the same room she is standing in. The room is her body. The room is Ooh. The room never empties out. So now we have 5. Magic Man's wife, Simon's crown, Finn's father, Fern's creation, Marceline's duration. Each one is a wound that predates the person, that shapes the person, that is treated by the show as the actual subject of the story, while the story is, on the surface, about something else. And the show keeps doing this. It keeps doing it with characters you did not expect it to do it with. There is a character, for example, who appears for the first few seasons as a comic relief barbarian figure, who speaks in a strange voice, who lives in a tribe of mute fish people, and who is presented to the audience as a curiosity. Her name is Susan Strong, and the show, in the 8th season, reveals to her that she has been carrying a wound she did not know she had, in the form of a piece of hardware in her body she has not been aware of, and that the hardware has been ready to activate her entire life. Reboot is Season 8, Episode 13. It aired in 2016. Susan Strong, who has been a recurring character since Season 2, is exposed in this episode as a cyborg. There is a chip in her head. The chip is part of an old system. The system was built by an organization called the Founders, which is a kind of pre-Mushroom War human conspiracy whose remnants persist into U. The chip is activated remotely, against Susan's will, during the events of this episode. When the chip activates, Susan loses control of her own body. The body, under the chip's instruction, attacks Finn. Susan is, throughout this, visibly still herself in some interior way. She is begging her own body to stop. She is fighting the impulses being routed through her. She is losing. The body keeps moving toward Finn, against the conscious will of the woman who is supposed to be in charge of it. Think about what that depicts. A character who has been, for 6 seasons, a friendly, slightly comic figure, is shown to have been, the entire time, the host of a piece of technology she did not consent to. The technology was placed in her before she was old enough to refuse it. The technology has been dormant. The technology has been there, waiting, while she lived her life. And when a signal she could not block was sent, the technology took over her body and used it to attack the people she cared about. She did not become a different person. She remained herself. The body simply was no longer hers to direct. The show does not soften this. The fight is a fight. Susan, the conscious person, is reduced to a witness inside her own action. She watches her own arm swing. She watches herself try to hit Finn. She apologizes to him while her body is hitting him. The duality is the entire point of the scene. The show could have written the chip activation as a personality switch, where Susan herself becomes hostile. It does not. It writes the chip activation as alienation. The body is doing one thing, the person is doing another. The two are no longer aligned. And the episode wants you to understand that this misalignment is not a sudden event. It is a constant possibility. It has been there the whole time. It is the wound she did not know she had. This is one of the show's quietest, cruelest moves. It tells you, in the form of a single character's reveal, that there is no guarantee any of these people is in full possession of themselves. Anyone in U might have something old, something pre-Mushroom War, something inherited sitting inside them that they have not been informed about. Anyone, at any moment, might find their body executing the instructions of a system that was set up before they were born. Susan is the example. The example generalizes. The wound is not an event. The wound is a possibility every character is carrying, and most of them, in most episodes, simply do not know they are carrying it. Susan, after the chip is dealt with, survives. She survives differently. She becomes, in later episodes, a slightly different person than she was before. She has to live with the knowledge that her body, until that day, had been a system of 2 layers, only one of which she controlled. She has to learn to trust the body again. She has to learn what it means to be Susan, knowing that Susan is the conscious occupant of a piece of hardware that has its own opinions about who it should hit. The show gives her time to do this. The show does not rush her through it. The show treats her, after Reboot, the way it treats Simon after I Remember You. It treats her as a person who is now in possession of a piece of information about herself that she will be metabolizing for the rest of the run. The wound, in Susan's case, is the wound of construction. She was made by someone. The someone did not tell her. The construction has consequences she will be carrying for the rest of her life. This is a particular flavor of wound the show has been working with the entire time, and Reboot is the episode where it gets the most explicit name. The wound is that you were made. The wound is that the people who made you did not ask. The wound is that the madeness is still in you. And the only thing you can do, the show implies, is keep going with the madeness and try to live a life around the parts of you that are not yours. There is a smaller, sadder dimension to Susan's reveal that the show, with characteristic patience, lets surface in later episodes rather than in Reboot itself. Susan has, since season 2, been the leader of a tribe of mute fish people called the Human Tribe. They are not humans. They believe themselves to be humans because Susan, in her pre-Reboot life, had told them they were, and they had accepted her account of their identity because she was the closest thing to a teacher they had. The Human Tribe, in other words, was built on Susan's understanding of who she was. When Susan, in Reboot, learns that she is, herself, not what she had thought she was, the implication is that everything she had taught the Humans is also not what they had thought it was. The wound she did not know she had has, by the time it surfaces, already produced a downstream cohort of small wounds in the people she had been protecting. The show, with no fanfare, lets you draw this conclusion yourself. Susan's wound is not just hers. The wound has been doing pedagogical work for years. The humans will, in their own time, have to revise their understanding of themselves in light of her revision. The wound, again, spreads. And this is the show's quiet pattern with construction wounds. The wound is never only the wound of the person who carries it. The wound, by being the structure of the person's life, becomes the structure of the lives of the people the person has touched. Susan's chip is not just in her body. It is, in some indirect way, in the curriculum she taught her tribe. Lemongrab's defect is not just in his cognition. It is in the bodies of his children. Princess Bubblegum's substrate is not just her own biology, it is the biology of an entire kingdom. The wound expands outward from its original carrier until it becomes the architecture of a network of carriers. The network is what the show calls a society. The society is what the show calls Ooh. In the second half of Holly Jolly Secrets, after Finn and Jake have watched all of the Ice King's secret video diaries, they have a choice. They can release the diaries. They can expose the Ice King's identity to the world. They can show everyone what they have just learned. They do not. They make the opposite choice. They preserve his privacy. They fabricate a story that returns the diaries to him. They give him back the secret he did not know he was keeping. The episode does not score this as heroism. The episode scores it as basic decency. Finn and Jake are, in this small choice, doing the kind of small protective attention the show keeps depicting as the only meaningful response to a person's wound. They are not curing the Ice King. They are not even, in any large sense, helping him. They are, in this one small administrative way, refusing to make his condition into public information. The privacy, they understand, is part of what allows him to keep functioning. The privacy is, in this show's terms, attendance. There is a different kind of maidness in Ooh, though, that the show treats with a different kind of seriousness. Susan was made by an old human institution. The wound she carries is industrial. There is another character, or rather a series of characters, who are made by a person, in a kitchen, out of available ingredients, with the explicit intention that they should rule something, and who came out wrong. The show treats the wrongness with a strange tenderness that other entries on this list do not get, because the wrongness is, in this case, the original sin of their existence. They were defective from the first second. The defect is who they are. They cannot fix it because the defect is the thing the show calls them by. Their name is Lemon Grab, and there are several of them, and they are extremely loud. There is a moment in Season 5 where Finn and Jake walk into Lemon Grab's castle and find his children dying of starvation. The episode is called All Your Fault. It is Season 5, Episode 9. It aired on January 28th, 2013, and it is one of the most disturbing episodes the show ever produced, in part because it does not let you diffuse the disturbance with comedy, and in part because the disturbance is the entire point. The setup is this. Lemon Grab is a character created by Princess Bubblegum in an attempt to engineer an heir. He is a tall, lemon-shaped being with a screaming voice, an unstable temperament, and a fundamentally limited grasp of social ritual. He was, on his creation, immediately recognized as ill-suited to leadership and exiled to a far corner of the kingdom. He has been there since Season 2, governing his own small region in his own erratic way. In Season 5, Princess Bubblegum, again attempting to address the question of succession, creates a second Lemon Grab to keep the first one company. Then the two Lemon Grabs, at some point that the show only gestures at, decide to fuse together by literally eating each other, forming a single larger Lemon Grab who calls himself, in later episodes, Lemon Grab. And this fused Lemon Grab, by the time of All Your Fault, has produced a population of small lemon children of his own, using ingredients and methods Princess Bubblegum did not authorize and did not supervise. All Your Fault opens with Finn and Jake being invited to Lemon Grab's castle. They arrive. They are greeted in the Lemon Castle's strange, formal way by Lemon Grab. Lemon Grab takes them to meet his children. The children are pale. The children are silent. The children are starving. They have been starving because Lemon Grab does not understand how to feed them. He has been giving them, instead of food, something he insists is food, which is a kind of paste he produces. The paste is inedible. The children, who cannot speak well and cannot leave, have been quietly dying. Finn and Jake try to fix this. They try, in their habitual way, to be useful, to find an answer, to make a thing right. The children, who recognize that Finn and Jake are made of meat, attempt to eat them. Not metaphorically. Literally. The lemon children, deranged from starvation, treat Finn and Jake as food. The episode does not score this as horror. The episode does not score it as comedy. The episode scores it as a kind of slow, calm catastrophe that is happening because of an error in the original creation of Lemon Grab, and that no one in the building has the resources to address. Lemon John, who is the largest of the lemon children and the one most aware of what is happening, dissolves himself in order to feed the others. He turns his own body into juice. The juice can be drunk. The other lemon children drink him. He is gone. The episode lets this happen. The episode does not flinch. A child made of a fruit dissolves into juice and is consumed by his siblings so that they will not starve. And the show treats this as the natural, almost inevitable consequence of a kingdom being founded by someone who does not know how to keep his subjects alive. This is not comedy. This is the literal text. Lemon Grab created children he could not feed. The children were dying. One of them turned himself into food. The show lets this happen. The show does not undo it. The show does not punish Lemon Grab. The show does not even particularly mark this as the most upsetting thing it has done. It just shows it to you. It shows you that in Ooh, the wound of being badly made is a wound that propagates downward. Lemongrab was badly made by Princess Bubblegum. Lemongrab, in turn, badly made his children. The children, in turn, are dissolving each other to survive. The wound is generational. The wound is iatrogenic in the most literal sense. It was caused by the attempt to heal. Princess Bubblegum was trying to solve the problem of succession. The solution she made was Lemongrab. The solution Lemongrab made for himself was the children. The children are eating each other. The wound is doing what wounds do, which is to spread until something stops it. Finn and Jake do not stop it. They cannot. They were not equipped to stop it. They leave. The episode ends with them, outside the castle, having failed to fix any of what they saw. They walk away. The lemon children stay. The wound stays. Watch the way the show stages the central act in this episode, because the staging is doing work the dialogue is not. Lemon John, the lemon child who chooses to dissolve, is the largest of the children. He's the one who can speak in something close to sentences. He's the one who, in the brief moments he has on screen, displays the most awareness of the situation his siblings are in. He does not deliver a speech. He does not announce his decision. He simply, in the middle of the chaos, melts. He becomes juice. The juice fills a container. His siblings drink. The show does not score the dissolution with mourning music. The show does not even particularly mark it as a decision. It depicts the dissolution the way it might depict a candle going out. The candle did what a candle does at the end of its wick. The room is now lit by what the candle gave. Lemon John, by becoming food, has made the only contribution available to him in a kingdom that has no other resources. The show is, by depicting this without sentimentality, asking you to register that this is what happens when an inheritance of bad making is allowed to propagate without intervention. The siblings will be fed for some hours. The hours will run out. The wound is still there. The juice was a temporary patch on a structural problem. And the structural problem is not Lemongrab's fault, in any individual sense. Lemongrab was made wrong. Lemongrab inherited the wrongness from the conditions of his creation. He is, by every available indicator, doing the best he can with the limited resources of cognition he was given. His failure to feed his children is not malice. It is incapacity. The incapacity was authored by Princess Bubblegum in the same lab in which she would later author Goliad. Lemongrab is, in this sense, a wound Princess Bubblegum made, who in turn made a wound he could not address, who in turn made children who could not survive the conditions of their making. The chain of authorship goes back to the same gardener who, in Goliad, is sitting in her lab worrying about succession. The Candy Kingdom is, in its periphery, the visible record of her earlier attempts. Lemongrab is not a foreigner to the Candy Kingdom. Lemongrab is the unburied evidence of a different prototype the gardener tried. The show, by letting Lemongrab continue to exist, is doing a thing it does often, which is to refuse to put away its own evidence. The kingdom keeps the failed prototypes. The failed prototypes keep producing children. The children keep dissolving each other. None of it is hidden. It is the texture of the world. The show does not tell you what to make of this. The show does not have Princess Bubblegum, when she eventually learns about it, be punished for it. She is rattled. She acknowledges her responsibility. She does not fix it. The kingdom of the lemon people continues to exist in its dysfunctional way on the edge of the larger Candy Kingdom throughout the rest of the show. The show, in other words, lets the Lemon Kingdom be a permanent visible reminder of what happens when an attempt to address a wound creates a new wound. And the new wound is allowed to live, because killing it would require addressing the original wound. And the original wound is the entire architecture of the world. There is no clean exit. There is only the kingdom, eating itself, on the outskirts. So now we have 6. Magic Man's wife, Simon's crown, Finn's father, Fern's creation, Marceline's duration, Susan's chip, and now, threaded through all of it, the Lemon family, who exist as a kind of permanent emblem of what happens when a wound is treated by adding to it instead of by sitting with it. There is one more wound this video is going to address before we get to the finale, and it is the largest wound the show has, because it is the wound at the bottom of every other wound, the original injury from which all the rest descend, and the show, true to form, gives it a body and a face and a voice, so that you can see in one specific scene what the wound looks like when it walks into a room. The body is green. The face is a skull. The voice belongs to Ron Perlman. His name, in the show, is the Lich. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The Lich appears for the first time as a true threat in an episode called Mortal Folly, and is defeated, at least temporarily, in the episode that immediately follows, Mortal Recoil. Those episodes are near the end of Season 2. Mortal Folly is Season 2, Episode 24, and Mortal Recoil is Season 2, Episode 25. They aired in September 2011. They are the show's first formal introduction of the Lich as the antagonist whose presence the rest of the show will be organized around. And what they establish, even at this early stage, is that the Lich is not a villain in the conventional sense. The Lich is not interested in revenge. The Lich is not interested in power. The Lich does not have a plan for the world after he has won. What the Lich wants is for the world to end. What the Lich is, in his own description of himself, is the certainty that all things end. He is entropy with a face. In Mortal Folly, Princess Bubblegum sends Finn and Jake on a quest to seal the Lich away. The plot beats are conventional. There is a magical weapon. There is a doorway. There is a fight. What is not conventional is the way the Lich speaks. The Lich does not boast. The Lich does not threaten. The Lich states. He addresses Finn directly. He tells Finn calmly that he is going to die. He tells him that everyone he loves is going to die. He tells him that the world is going to die, and that the death is not personal, and that the death is not even particularly an act, and that the death is simply the eventual condition of all configured matter, and that he, the Lich, is the agent through which that eventuality is going to be administered. He speaks like a clerk. He speaks like a calendar. He is not angry. He is just correct, in his own terms. And the show stages the encounter so that you, as the viewer, have to sit with the possibility that he is correct. Finn defeats him in this episode by trapping him inside the body of Princess Bubblegum, which has the side effect, in Mortal Recoil, of turning Princess Bubblegum into a vessel for the Lich until she can be cured. The episode lets the cost of the victory be visible. Finn does not, in winning, have the Lich go away. He has the Lich relocated. The Lich is still in the world. The Lich is now inside a body that the rest of the show cares about. The victory and the wound, again, are the same event. Then, when the show comes back to the Lich in Season 6, in Wake Up, and the episodes that follow, it raises the stakes. The Lich is not just trying to end Ooh. The Lich is trying to end the multiverse. The Citadel is built to contain him. The Citadel breaks. The Lich gets close, in the Season 6 premiere, to escape. The Lich is, in this period of the show, the existential horizon. The thing every other character's life is being lived in front of. The default end state of the world if no one stops it. In the Season 6 finale, an episode called The Comet, which aired in 2015, the Lich plot reaches its first major resolution. A cosmic entity descends to Ooh to convert one consciousness into a higher form. The Lich, who at this point has been reduced to a more pliable state by previous events, is the consciousness that, after much manipulation, is the one to merge with the comet. The Lich, who had been the embodiment of entropy, is converted into a new kind of being, named Sweet Pea. Sweet Pea is a small, gentle, lemon-related child who carries inside him the memory of having been the Lich, but who is no longer the Lich in any functional way. He is, in later episodes, raised by Tree Trunks and Mr. Pig as their son. He is a small boy with a quiet voice who is sometimes haunted by the older thing inside him, but who, with the help of the people who raise him, mostly is just a small boy. The show, by doing this, is making a specific claim about the wound of entropy. It is saying that the wound of certain ending is not addressable by being destroyed. It is addressable by being raised. The Lich, as Lich, could not be killed. The Lich, as a child, could be loved. The same entity, in a different developmental position, can be folded into a family and given a name and given dinner and given bedtime, and the wound, while not erased, can be made survivable. This is the show's most ambitious thesis. It is saying that the inheritance of catastrophe, if addressed early enough and tenderly enough, can be raised into a person rather than reproduced as a monster. The Lich is the wound. Sweet Pea is what the wound becomes when attendance arrives in time. There is a smaller, quieter detail in the post-Comet seasons that the show keeps coming back to, and it deserves a moment. Sweet Pea, after his adoption, has, occasionally, terrifying episodes in which the older thing inside him stirs. He has nightmares. He has, in one episode, a brief vision of the Lich's face appearing in a mirror. He is, in those moments, frightened of himself. The interesting thing about how the show writes these moments is that it does not stage them as the eruption of a hidden evil. It stages them as a small child, being scared of a part of himself he does not understand. Tree Trunks, who is his adoptive mother, comforts him. Mr. Pig, who is his adoptive father, comforts him. They do not lecture him. They do not give him a special weapon. They just hold him. They put him back to sleep. The night passes. The show keeps showing this kind of scene because the show is making, again and again, the same argument. The wound does not go away because the wound has been moved into a smaller body. The wound is still there. What is different is who is in the room when the wound moves. Sweet Pea is not alone with the Lich. Sweet Pea is with his parents. That is the whole intervention. The intervention is not magical. The intervention is parental presence. The show insists that this is enough, in the cases where it has the chance to be enough, to keep the wound from becoming the end of the world. And this is the move that makes the entire architecture of the show legible. Adventure Time is, At its center, a show about whether wounds can be raised. Every character we have looked at so far is, in some sense, a wound that was either raised well, raised badly, raised partially, or not raised at all. Magic Man was not raised. He was exiled. The wound became a person who broke things. Simon was not raised through the crown. The wound became a person who forgets. Finn was raised, kind of, by a stretched out yellow dog and his family, and the show treats that raising as the reason Finn, despite everything, can mostly hold himself together. Fern was raised badly. The wound became a person who could not bear to exist. Marceline was raised by Simon for a while, and then by no one for 1,000 years, and the wound became a person who learned to do the work alone. Susan was not raised in any conscious way at all. The wound was sleeping inside her until it woke up. Lemongrab was raised badly by Lemongrab. The wound spread to the children. And the Lich, by being raised by Tree Trunks and Mr. Pig, is the show's proof of concept that even the most extreme wound, if addressed by the right kind of attention, can be lived through. All of this is in service of one final argument. The show's last word on its own ethic is the finale, Come Along With Me, the 44-minute single episode that aired on September 3rd, 2018, and that the show formally counts as Season 10, Episode 13. The finale is too big to summarize in a sentence, and that is its design. It is supposed to land like a weight. The show, in its last episode, gathers every wound it has shown you over 10 seasons and tries to make peace with the fact that none of them can be undone. The peace it makes is not a treaty. The peace is a song. The song is Time Adventure. BMO sings it. Rebecca Sugar came back to the show years after she had left to make Steven Universe, to write it. The song is the show's answer to the question of what to do with a world full of inherited wounds. Come Along With Me has, on the surface, a plot. There is a war. The war is between the Candy Kingdom and an invading force led by Gumbald, who is, in the lore, an old relative of Princess Bubblegum's that she had previously thought of as a former enemy and turned into an inert candy person, and who has been restored by allies who oppose her sovereignty. The war is bad. The war involves the awakening of Golb, a cosmic entity beyond even the Lich in scale, who is the embodiment of chaos in the show's mythology. Golb is freed during the war. Golb descends. The kingdom is in danger. The world is in danger. The finale is the resolution of all of this. The resolution does not come through combat. The resolution comes through music. BMO begins to sing. The song is Time Adventure. The lyrics, which Rebecca Sugar wrote for this specific moment, describe a way of being in time that does not depend on permanence. The lyrics describe the persistence of love and presence across all the moments they have ever happened in. The lyrics describe a now that is also, simultaneously, a then. The lyrics describe a relationship to time that is not afraid of time. As BMO sings, the song travels. Other characters join in. Jake joins in. Finn joins in. Princess Bubblegum and Marceline join in. Even, eventually, Simon joins in, briefly, in a moment that the show stages so quietly you can miss it. The song spreads. The song reaches Golb. The song neutralizes Golb, not by defeating Golb, but by demonstrating that what Golb is, the embodiment of meaningless chaos, cannot enter a frequency in which meaning is being actively maintained by the people inside it. Think about what that actually means. The show is saying, in its final episode, that the only thing that has ever, in the long history of Ooh, kept the wound of cosmic entropy at bay is the activity of people paying attention to each other, the activity of singing a song to each other, the activity of being present. The Mushroom War happened because attendance broke down. Simon was lost because the crown forced him out of attendance. Finn was wounded because his father refused attendance. Fern died because the inheritance prevented attendance. Marceline survived because she chose again and again to attend to the people she loved, even when the people were lost. The Lich was tamed because Tree Trunks and Mr. Pig attended to a small lemon child. And, at the end, the way the world is saved from chaos is by enough people simultaneously attending to each other, through a song, that chaos cannot find a place to land. This is the show's argument. This is the conclusion of 10 years of writing. The wound is real. The wound cannot be eliminated. The wound is the architecture of the world. The only response that the world's most experienced survivors have come up with, that the show has been demonstrating in scene after scene, is attendance. Showing up. Paying attention. Singing to the small thing that is being eaten. Sitting on the stoop with the sick child. Holding the brother who is dissolving. Hovering outside the window of the man who does not remember you and trying anyway. None of these activities heal the wound. They simply make the wound livable. They are what humans and post-humans and vampires and slime princesses and shape-shifting dogs do in the absence of any other available cure. In the finale, Princess Bubblegum and Marceline, after the war is resolved, share a kiss. The kiss is canonized in the episode. It is not played for shock. It is not played for fan service. It is played as the natural continuation of an attendance the two of them have been performing on each other for centuries. They have been attending to each other through estrangement, through political disagreement, through the disparate timelines of mortality and immortality, through the various small cruelties they have done to each other and the various small graces. The kiss is what attendance looks like, eventually, when it has been performed long enough that the two participants have run out of reasons to keep pretending it is not what they are doing. The show does not make a speech about this, it simply shows it. They are standing on a hill. They kiss. The world has just been saved. Neither of them is shocked. Neither of them is exuberant. They are, in the visual language of the show, finally permitted to acknowledge in public what they have been doing privately the whole time. And in the same finale, Simon, briefly freed from the crown by the events of the war, has a moment of conscious presence. He returns, for a few seconds, to himself. He sees Marceline. He recognizes her. The two of them speak, briefly. He hugs her. The show does not overstage this. It lets it last as long as it needs to last, and then lets it end. The wound is still in him. The wound is still going to take him back. The freedom is temporary. But for the duration of the freedom, attendance is possible, and attendance happens. And the show treats the attendance as worth depicting in detail, even though the freedom is going to end. Attendance is worth doing even when it does not heal. That is the closing image. That is the argument. BMO's song continues, in the structure of the finale, into the closing montage. The show shows you, in a long, time-lapsed sequence, in the years after the events of the finale. Kingdoms change. Children grow up. Characters you have not seen in seasons reappear briefly. A small character you barely notice becomes the next ruler of something. Buildings fall. Trees grow. Time passes. The show stages the entire post-finale future of in a few minutes of animation, set to a song about attendance, and the message is unmistakable. The world continues. The wounds continue. The attendance continues. None of it ends, and none of it heals, and the song keeps playing, and the people keep being present to each other, and the show has been, the whole time, a depiction of that practice. There is one moment in the closing montage that is, in the context of everything this video has just walked through, the load-bearing image of the entire finale, and it is so quiet that it is easy to miss. The camera, in the montage, briefly returns to the tree fort, decades into the post-finale future. The tree fort is older. The candle is low. BMO is alone. The other characters who used to live there are not in the room. BMO continues, in this scene, to be BMO. BMO continues, in this scene, to be present. The little robot, who has been, across the entire run of the show, the most consistent practitioner of attendance, is shown still doing the thing the show has been depicting since the first season. BMO sings to themselves. BMO plays. BMO is in the world. The show is, in this image, telling you that attendance is also something you can do alone. Attendance is also something that persists when the people you are attending to are not there. The practice does not require company to be the practice. BMO, in the empty tree fort, is the show's image of attendance as a habit of being. The habit outlasts the cast. The habit, in some sense, is the show. And then, in the very last sequence of the montage, the camera pulls back. It shows you all of from above. It shows you the kingdoms, dotted across the landscape. It shows you the future shape of a country that has been the subject of 10 years of writing. And the show, in its final image, gives you a small, almost throwaway shot of a person you have never met before, walking in the wilderness, in a costume that resembles Finn's. The shot is brief. The implication is gentle. The shot is the show saying that the work continues. There will be a new Finn. There will be a new hero. The kingdom will produce new carriers of new wounds. The carriers will, in their turn, learn to attend. The wheel does not stop. The show, by ending on this image, is refusing the closure of a single hero story and replacing it with the closure of an institution that will keep generating heroes for as long as it needs to. The show is the institution. The institution is attendance. The institution does not end with the credits. So what is Adventure Time, finally? Adventure Time is the show that, for 10 seasons, very patiently, very calmly, very specifically, walked you through a fictional country in which every visible inhabitant was the carrier of a wound older than themselves, and demonstrated, in case after case, that the wound could not be cured, but could be attended to. The show used the formal vocabulary of a children's cartoon to do this. It used songs, it used a yellow shape-shifting dog, it used the conventions of episodic adventure. It used the 8-minute runtime of its original episodes, before it earned the longer runtimes of its later specials, to teach you, gradually, that the wound was the actual subject. The show is a clinic. The adventure was the waiting room. The kingdoms were the wards. The fights were the symptoms. The crown was the diagnosis. The crowns, plural, because every character has one. The crowns are not removable. The crowns are what each of them is doing, all of the time, while also trying to live. Magic Man cannot stop being the man who lost Margles. The cruelty is not a personality. It is the shape his loss took when no one helped him. Simon cannot stop being the man who is being eaten. The forgetting is not a personality. It is what the crown does to whoever wears it. Finn cannot stop being the boy whose father did not recognize him. The arm grew back, technically, but the arm is grown from the lineage of the dissolution that took the original arm, and the lineage is the wound, and the lineage is in him now. Fern cannot stop being the copy that should not exist. He stops when the arm hears the wrong word, but the stopping is not relief. It is just stopping. Marceline cannot stop being the woman who outlives everyone. She tried. The trying produced the release of the vampires. The vampires had to be put back inside her. She picked her wound up again because the wound was doing work and she was the only person who could keep doing it. Princess Bubblegum cannot stop being the soil. The kingdom is made of her body. She cannot abdicate the kingdom because the kingdom would die without the gardener. She is the gardener forever. Susan cannot stop being the woman who was made by someone else. The chip is gone, but the knowledge is not. Lemongrab cannot stop being the badly made successor. His children dissolve into each other on the outskirts of a kingdom that has agreed not to look at them too closely. The Lich cannot stop being entropy. He just becomes, for now, a small boy with a quiet voice who is loved by his adoptive parents and whose interior weight is being shared daily by people who agreed to share it. Each of these is a wound. Each of these is being addressed by attendance. The attendance does not cure the wound. The attendance is what the show calls the only available life. And the show does not preach this. The show does not put it in a speech. The show simply lets every episode be a record of what attendance looks like when it is being practiced, and what its absence looks like when it is not. The lullaby on the stoop, the hug from the man who no longer remembers, the hand on the brother who is dissolving, the kiss on the hill after the war, the song that travels from one character to another until the chaos cannot land. All of it is the same activity in different forms. The show, in its final word, is saying that this activity is what you do with the world you are given, and that the world you are given is, regardless of whether you wanted it, a world full of wounds. One way to put what the show is doing is to say that it has been writing, for 10 years, a long argument against the idea that pain has to be hidden in order to be loved through. The show puts the pain in plain sight. The show lets the carrier carry it visibly. The show lets the friends, the family, the strangers in the next kingdom over see the wound that the carrier did not ask to be the carrier of. And the show, by making the wound visible, makes the attendance possible. You cannot, in this show's logic, attend to a wound you do not know is there. The kingdom, by being a clinic, is also a place where wounds are seen. The seeing is the first step of the attendance. The seeing is what the show, by being a show, is also doing for the audience. The audience, watching, is also performing the practice. The watching is also a form of attendance. The reason a sleep video about Adventure Time can be the genre it is, the reason a person can listen, half awake, in the dark, to the description of a small girl being sung to in the ruins of a destroyed grocery store, is that the listening is the same activity the show is depicting. The listener is, in the act of listening, doing the show's central practice. The show is teaching, through its form as much as through its content, that the most important thing a person can do for a wound is to be in the room with it, awake or half asleep, for as long as the room needs holding. Adventure Time is the document of what those wounds look like when they are attended to with the patience of friends. The dark theory of Adventure Time is, finally, not dark at all. The dark theory is just the show's diagnosis, said in plain language. Every character is the carrier of a wound that predates them. The kingdom is a clinic. Adventure is the waiting room. And the only treatment, in this world or any other, is the slow, repeated, unglamorous decision to keep being present to the wound and to the carrier of the wound for as long as the body keeps walking around. The show says this with songs and with shape-shifting and with a small green sprout growing out of a teenager's stump in the silence of an episode that strips the music away. It says it in the way Marceline finishes the song The Ice King Cannot. It says it in the way Princess Bubblegum sits in her lab at night. It says it in the way Finn buries Fern in a pot. It says it in the way BMO sings and the others join and the chaos does not enter. None of it is metaphor. All of it is metaphor. The two readings are the same reading. That is the whole story. The show ended on September 3rd, 2018. 44 minutes of finale. 8 years of episodes behind it. 283 episodes total, depending on how you count the multi-part stories. 10 seasons. A complete arc, from a boy and a dog in a treehouse to a country that has been mapped, walked, and tended by characters who, by the end, had become the kind of friends the show keeps insisting are the only available cure for the world it depicts. The country of continues, in the closing montage, into a future none of its current inhabitants will see. New characters are introduced just long enough to suggest that the wounds will keep arriving and the attendants will keep being needed. The show, in its last frames, hands the work to whoever is going to do it next. The work is the show. The show is the work. There is no other instruction. There is only the practice. The practice is what the show is. The practice is what the wound is for. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.